So our theme of the week is
how to travel around New Zealand by bus. So today we're going to be talking about everything that there is to know about traveling by bus. Should you want to take national coach bus lines all around New Zealand? Should you want to travel with a hop-on hop-off network? Should you just take a tourist bus around New Zealand? Or should you want to use the commuting buses to transport yourself through the major cities of New Zealand? We'll cover everything there is to do with traveling by bus in New Zealand. Okay, so we're going to get started with our theme this week, and we're going to get started with some quick tips for traveling around New Zealand by bus. So Laura, take it away.
All right, so yeah, just some quick tips, some nice easy ones to ease us into talking about this subject. So first of all, one tip I'd like to give to anyone is to try and purchase your bus pass, whether it's for a bus tour or for hop-on hop-off bus like Kiwi Experience. Purchase your bus pass in the low season of New Zealand, which is between April to August. Usually there's a lot of discounts on bus passes during this time, but the good thing is that usually you don't need, if you're getting a bus pass, for instance, with Kiwi Experience or some bus tours as well, some bus passes allow you to actually travel later in the year, so you don't necessarily have to go for a specific date. Sometimes you can just keep that bus pass on hold and then make use of it later. Another tip is to ask the driver which is the best side of the bus to sit on for the views. So every day when you're getting on the bus, you can just say like, hey, which is going to be the best side for views today? And that's just a easy way to make the most of your trip day by day. Packing some snacks is another quick tip. So it's a good icebreaker, sharing snacks on the bus, that sort of thing. Good way to start a conversation with people if you are traveling on your own and meeting lots of new people for the first time. Also, another thing to do with food is to pack your own lunch. So as you are starting the day, perhaps in a hostel, and you can, prepare your own lunch and stuff. That way, when you're traveling around and there's usually buses are stopping at cafes where there's usually quite expensive cabinet food, you can save a ton of money by actually picking up groceries the day before and preparing sandwiches and stuff like that in your hostel to take with you on the bus. Also pack a layer. So in the bus, temperature control can be all over the place. They can sometimes put air conditioning on. They can sometimes, not have air conditioning on and you're super hot. So just make sure that you have the options to put on more layers if you need to. Although there's a sort of hint in New Zealand that buses and things are usually not on time, it is a good idea to make sure that you are actually on time yourself, because the one time that the bus departs on this actual proper departure time will be that'll be the one time you're late and you miss the bus, and bus drivers are usually quite grumpy when they're like, you need to be on time. Even if you're going on coffee breaks or having a lunch stop, you need to make sure that you are back in the designated place that you need to be at. And then finally, this is one for if you're using city buses, make sure that you are waving the bus driver, like getting their attention. If you're waiting at a bus stop, they don't necessarily stop at all the bus stops unless you indicate that you want to get on that bus. So make sure that you wave down the bus driver, and that is kind of how you get on a public bus in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's true. You've got to be on time for the bus, but the bus doesn't necessarily need to be on time for you.
I know.
So yeah, that's a very, very good tip.
Yeah.
So let's get started with the national coach buses, which is kind of like the countrywide public transportation to go around New Zealand. It's basically the most expensive public transport network in the whole country.
Expansive, not expensive.
Yeah, expensive. Or extensive as well.
Yeah.
So it's akin to what you would get in Europe as like your train networks, right? They go in pretty much every cities, and you can go to many places. Well, in New Zealand, we kind of doing it by bus. So let's begin with a few questions back and forth, so you get to understand a little bit the national bus network. So let's begin with which company run the national bus network in New Zealand?
Okay, so there's basically one major national coach company in New Zealand, and that's Intercity. Basically, they're pretty pretty much got the monopoly in the whole country in terms of bus travel and, like A to B coach network travel. However, there's very small companies, more on the South Island, that do very limited routes. For instance, there's Atomic Travel, which just have a route between Christchurch and Greymouth, for example. So there is those sort of options when you get into some, areas of the South Island, but mostly you will be looking at Intercity while in New Zealand.
Now, which national coach buses so we have closed? So there's a lot of companies that have come in and gone and so on. Some people may have heard of some of them. So which one are no longer available?
Okay, so yeah, there's been quite a few over the years. Really, back in the day, there was Magic Bus, and that no longer exists in New Zealand. There was also Naked Bus, although their website is still up and running. They are not actually a bus company themselves anymore. They don't provide any bus services. There was Manor Bus, but again, that's closed. That no longer exists. And just before the pandemic, Skip Bus opened, but then the pandemic hit, and then they were no longer operating, and they're still not operating as of the time of recording this video, and we haven't received any news of when if they're going to start up again.
Okay, so what is it like to travel in national coach buses in New Zealand?
Okay, so in terms of using the coach buses, they're pretty much from A to B. That's the first thing you need to know. You're not going on necessarily a set route around the country, but
no reason. So basically, what you do is that you buy a ticket for one kind of section that you want to travel. Let's say from Wellington to Auckland, for example. So it's pretty simple. You buy your ticket either online or through any of the agents, and then you show up about 15 minutes before departure, and you hop on the bus, and that's kind of like how the basic of how it works. However, there is also another way two other ways to travel through the national coach buses in New Zealand. And that's the Flexi Pass and the Travel Pass. Now, Laura, what is a Flexi Pass?
So a Flexi Pass is basically you're buying travel hours, they're called. So instead of buying just one ticket, you have an allocated set of hours that you can use to say the route between Auckland and Wellington takes 4 hours. I'm just pulling that out of the air. That's not necessarily true, but say it's 4 hours, then you allocate 4 hours of your credit towards them. So it's a way to pay for multiple bus journeys, but just once.
And so when we talk about 4 hours, like let's say there is a delay and the trip takes 5 hours because the bus gets broken or anything, it doesn't affect like how much hours you will have spent of your pass. Those hours are just kind of decided by the company. Like that trip, let's say from Auckland to Rotorua, will always be 4 hours and be worth 4 hours of your pass. Now there is another type of pass that you can get with Intercity, and that's the travel pass.
Yeah, so the travel pass is actually around a set route. So you decide, there's various routes you can choose from, and you just basically decide, okay, I want to pay this much money to travel, say, one loop, set route, a loop around the North Island, or a set loop around the South Island, or the whole country. And it's a set itinerary, so it's kind of the itinerary sorted for you. You only pay one fee for that.
All right, so in short, how the national buses work, you can get tickets one by one to go from point A to point B. You can get a travel pass and you can get a Flexi Pass. All right, so now what is it like to travel with Intercity? What is a day in the life of a passenger of Intercity?
Okay, so usually you are given an allocated time and place to go and catch your bus. So usually it's recommended that you go there, you be at the bus stop 15 minutes early. The bus may be there early, taking passengers on, like sorting out luggage and that sort of thing. Usually give your name and perhaps your receipt or bus number details to the bus driver as you're getting on the bus. And then from there, you are taking your journey, which sometimes the bus driver provides commentary about the places that you're seeing. So in some way, it's kind of like a tour bus in that respect, but in other respects, it's not like a tour bus because you're not necessarily stopping to stop at short walks or to go to waterfalls or photo stops and viewpoints like other bus tours that we're going to talk about later that they would do. Basically, the only time you're stopping it depends on the duration of the time you're on the bus, but for longer journeys, they'll stop for usually about 10 to 15 minutes for toilet and coffee break, and then sometimes about half an hour for a lunch break. So, that's pretty much that in a nutshell.
Now, is there some kind of night buses that you can take where you can sleep in the bus, a bit like what sometimes they do in Greyhound in the US?
So there is one night bus, which in New Zealand is called the sleeper bus. It is run by Intercity and it goes between Auckland and Wellington, and it does have comforts in there like beds. So yeah, there is just one night bus.
All right, so let's move on to the pros and the cons. Obviously, pros and cons are kind of like a big deal. So let's start with the pros of traveling with Intercity in New Zealand, Laura.
Yeah. So obviously the biggest pro for Intercity is that it is the cheapest transport method for getting around New Zealand. So that's obviously the number one thing. For another pro would be that it allows for independent travel because their network is so extensive. They go to most towns in New Zealand. It means that you can, if you want to plan a crazy itinerary to some really different places, you definitely have the flexibility to do that with Intercity. And also they have daily departures across the country. So usually, you can travel on the bus at least once per day. They'll have at least one departure from a set location per day.
All right, and let's talk about the cons. I didn't forget.
So the cons is that it's not as social as some other buses. So you are sharing this bus experience with a whole mixed crowd. You'll have people that are just, traveling across the country to see their family or commuting to the place where they have to work for the week. Or you'll have people that are traveling, like actually, backpacking or whatever. You might have families, you might have old people, whole mixed bag. But compared to like going on a bus tour where you are traveling with lots of people that are also, really excited to be traveling around New Zealand, it's not quite the same vibe on the Intercity bus. It's usually a lot quieter, and you may or may not be talking to the people next to you depending on who they are and what they want, and maybe they don't want to speak to you, so so that's
it's okay. I'll talk to you, Laura.
I'm not speaking from experience or anything. And then another con is that the buses, like I say, they don't stop anywhere on their journey. They don't stop for walks. They don't stop for photo stops or anything. So it is like on the road, you're gonna be missing some stuff. But that's the way it is. Yeah.
All right, so while you guys are coming up with some more questions, we're going to move on with our coverage of bus travel in New Zealand. And this time we're going to be talking about New Zealand bus tours. So like the tourist way to travel around New Zealand. So this is kind of your guided way, your guided tour around New Zealand, those set bus tours, which are going to be like those itineraries that you buy where you have like 14 days around New Zealand and all that. So let's start with the different type of companies that are available in New Zealand for bus tours, Laura.
Yeah, so there's bus companies that, they aim for different sort of trips. So there'll be ones that are like backpacker trips that are aimed at people aged 18 to 30 years old. There may be more activity-specific bus tours that travel around New Zealand, like hiking tours or snow sports tours in the winter. There may be tours for seniors or luxury travelers. So there really is there's quite a lot of different style of bus tours that you can be taking. Just to give you a few ideas of different companies, although we don't really have time to list them all because there really is a lot of bus tours around New Zealand. It's one of like the main ways to travel and to experience New Zealand. So in terms of a national coach bus, one of the biggest ones is AAT Kings. For a backpacker bus experience, you may choose someone like Kiwi Experience or perhaps Flying Kiwi. There's also for small group tours, that could be like Hacker Tours or Wild Kiwi. For seniors, Luxury Gold or Moa Tours, sorry. Is it Moa Tours or Moa Treks?
I think it's Moa Trek.
Moa Treks. Or Moa Trek. That's one for seniors. And then for hiking tours, Hiking New Zealand is one specific company that would specialize in that.
So we do list on NZ Pocket Guide all the companies that we recommend for each different type of travel. So all you've got to do is to go on NZ Pocket Guide, then clicking on travel tips, then transportation, and then bus. And then in there, we actually really talk about a lot of information. Another way we actually categorize the different companies that you can use to travel around New Zealand is with the length of your tour. So we actually are listing the best 5 days 7-day tours, of all of New Zealand, Northern and Southern. And then we do the same thing for 7-day tour, all of New Zealand, Northern and Southern. Then we do it for like a 2 weeks tour, Northern and Southern, and then we do for like longer, like 20 plus days. So we really give you a lot of options, and we kind of list all the companies which are operating and have a good track record. So that could be a really good place for you to get started. But then yet another way to actually select your company when traveling in New Zealand is to actually choose your departure area. So we also will list for you the best tour companies which are going to be starting in Auckland or in Christchurch or in Queenstown or in Wellington. So you can choose your departure city. So again, head to NZ Pocket Guide and you'll find all this information. Or even simpler, if you click on the link, I link to a very specific article in the description of this video, and there you will be able to get pointed out to the exact articles you want to go for. But let's actually cover more of those tourist buses, and let's cover how do you travel, with a tourist bus tour in New Zealand. What does it really look like? How does it work, Laura?
Yeah. So to start with, you need to actually choose the bus tour. So that involves, actually booking a tour for a set amount of days, which can last from 3 to 24 days. So there's really a lot of options. And then with that, you choose a specific departure date for these more inclusive bus tours, and these tours usually will include all accommodation, at least one meal a day. A lot of the times it's just breakfast, but it really can change. Sometimes it's lunch, sometimes it's breakfast and dinner, so really that's where you need to do a bit more research to see what's included. We do have a lot of advice on that on nzpocketguide.com. There are sometimes some activities included, and but a lot of the times the big ticket items are not included, so you need to see if you can add those on once you get started traveling around. And there are options to upgrade to private rooms if you prefer not to share either in a hostel, or sometimes it's twin share options. And then also you have the option when booking to let the company know if you have any dietary requirements. If they are providing meals, then they need to make sure that they don't make you ill. So from there, you travel to New Zealand, and usually a lot of bus tour companies will have an introduction day. So they may meet up the day before traveling, or they may not have this, or you might not have time to go. So you just basically meet at the designated time and spot that they're going to pick you up from. So you go there, or they pick you up straight from your accommodation, and then you hit the road. In terms of days on the road, you basically get to do lots of stops. You get to stop at various different scenic lookouts, maybe waterfalls, short walks to some sites. There may be some short sort of activities that are free or included. There may be wine tasting, this sort of thing. So there's really like a lot of stuff can happen on the road as you're traveling. And also while you're traveling, your tour guide is going to be giving some commentary of the places that you're traveling to and give you some more information. Also, your tour guide will be taking bookings if you want to do any extra paid activities that are optional. These sort of activities are usually things like whitewater rafting, bungee jumping. They could be guided tours to Milford Sound, that sort of thing. So they're the things that aren't always included in your bus tour, but you have options to do those activities if you want to. And then when you get to a destination, sometimes the driver will make meals for the whole group, or they'll make it a group effort to make meals all together, that sort of thing. Or in terms of the meals included in your bus tour, maybe more luxurious bus tours will include meals at the hotel they've decided to stay for the night. So it might be more of a restaurant meal. Or a Maori experience, like a Maori hangi experience sometimes is included. So that's kind of what your meals look like in the evenings if they are included.
All right, so let's cover the pros and cons of traveling on around New Zealand in the bus tour. So what are the main pros?
The main pro is that everything is planned for you, so it's really stress-free. You don't have to worry too much other than if you want to do an optional extra activity, or, what you're going to have for lunch if it's not included, which they usually stop at places to pick up food anyway. Another pro is that it's a great way to meet new people. So you're traveling on a bus with a whole bunch of people that want to do exactly the same thing you're doing, and it's just a great way to sort of socialize and have fun with some different people from all around the world. And also, it's an action-packed experience. So you're always doing something. You're always on the move. You're always getting the opportunity to go to new sites, new experiences, activities. So it's really like, it feels like it's a trip that you can make the most of.
And is there any cons of traveling with bus tours around New Zealand?
So some cons is that you have limited time to yourself. You may get, an evening here and there. Some tours may have a free day, but most of the time you don't really get a lot of time to do your own thing.
Go.
Yeah. Also similar to that is that there's limited flexibility. So, you sometimes don't really have time to go and do this thing you want to do. You are stuck to a route around the country. You're stuck doing the things, staying in the same accommodations that everybody else needs to stay in. It's very limited in terms of flexibility. And then finally, although it's mostly all-inclusive, it's the most expensive.
Basically, because it's all inclusive.
Sorry, because it is all inclusive. Sorry, that's why the expense of the tour, the upfront cost is obviously much more expensive than if you were to buy an Intercity bus pass or other bus passes that we're about to talk about as well. It is the more expensive option to pay upfront.
All right. Okay, let's continue with our coverage of bus tours or bus travel in New Zealand with the hop-on, hop-off bus tours. So hop-on, hop-off bus tours in New Zealand are kind of a flexible tourist bus tour around New Zealand where you purchase a pass that will go to a certain set of destinations, but you are much more in control of what are going to be the inclusions, as you have to pay for them on the go, as what accommodation are going to be you're going to be using, as you have to book them on the go, and also as to how long you're going to be spending in each places. So it adds a little bit of flexibility to your tourist buses in New Zealand. Now let's get started with the different bus companies that are currently offering hop-on hop-off bus tours in New Zealand. Oh, I should say that one company.
It's going to be a short list. So prior to the pandemic, the list was extensive. There was Kiwi Experience, Stray and Flying Kiwi. However, Stray and Flying Kiwi, certainly for this year, 2023, haven't announced any departures for hop-on hop-off bus networks. So it's just Kiwi Experience now. So that's the hop-on, hop-off bus network in New Zealand. Kiwi Experience.
All right. Very long list. One. Okay, so it is usually a bit of a more of a confusing kind of system, right? How does hop-on hop-off work? Like, what is it? What is Kiwi Experience? How does it work?
Okay, so first of all, you need to purchase a bus pass. So the bus passes are usually for a set route of a specific part of the country or the whole country. So you can, if you're only here for, say, 5 days, there are bus pass options for that will fit in 5 days. However, you can have sort of 25-day itineraries, bus passes as well, which, by the way, you don't have to be traveling for 25 days. We'll move on to that later. But you buy your bus pass and then you don't actually have to start traveling until, basically you buy your bus pass and then you've got 12 months to decide when you want to start traveling. So you need to start traveling within a year of when you buy your bus pass. And then once you have your bus pass and you decide, okay, this is the date I want to start traveling on Kiwi Experience, you basically give them a call or an email and you basically book your departure date. So once that's all done, you are told where and when to meet the Kiwi Experience bus, and you go to that place at the correct time, maybe 15 minutes before, to make sure that you're not going to be late. And then it's simply a case of getting onto the bus, and the bus driver takes your passenger number, your name, or maybe one or two of those things, and then you start hitting the road. So in terms of a day on the road, it works very similar to actually how bus tours, like full bus tours, work. So you are stopping at places, photo opportunities, short walks, etc., etc. You also get the opportunity to stop at supermarkets because the accommodations that Kiwi Experience suggests that you stay at is usually hostels which have communal kitchens. So that allows you to save some money on food where you can cook your own meals. So Kiwi Experience does provide the opportunity to stop at supermarkets, especially if there isn't one at your destination that you're heading to. So yeah, and there's also toilet, refreshment stops, lunch stops, etc., etc. And also while you're traveling, there'll be clipboards that are going around the bus, and that's for you to one of them will be for your accommodation. So usually there's a suggested accommodation that's basically where everyone on the bus is going to be staying. There'll be only a few odd people that may choose to stay in a different hostel in the place that they're going. Maybe they want to do some more independent travel, but most people will have like this hostel option. And they decide whether they want to stay in a dorm, which is the cheapest option, or upgrade to a private room. So they tick that off all on the clipboard. You're not paying any money in the bus or anything. You're just giving the information to the bus driver. And then the bus driver will hand a clipboard which will go through the activities. So if you want to do any paid activities, say whitewater rafting or a I'm thinking of another activity, bungee jumping, I said that last time, or skydiving, this sort of thing, then you tick that off the list as well. That provides the information to the driver. And then only once you get to your destination, the driver will drive you straight to the activities, and you will pay at the activity operator, or they'll take you straight to the accommodation, and then you pay for your accommodation nights at the accommodation itself. And then you basically spend the night doing either independent things. You can do your own thing, or you can do activities that Kiwi Experience have suggested for you to do. Sometimes there's group sort of happenings going on. You can cook meals together, that sort of thing. So it's a much more social experience.
All right, so just to come back to the different accommodation which are suggested and activities which are suggested, do understand that the bus companies, and in that example will be Kiwi Experience, they do get a commission out of each accommodation that they suggest strongly for you to use and so on, right? So sometimes if you feel like you are going to be staying in a place like, let's say, Rotorua for an entire week and skipping another bus, it may make sense for you to actually research and maybe go on our website and actually check what are the different accommodation that we suggest, and pick an accommodation which is more suited for you. They tend to be the largest hostel that they're taking you to, so not necessarily a small independent one, which are like usually quirky and pretty cool to stay at, because they need to be able to accommodate big bus tours. So do keep that in mind. Now that said, it's a pretty cool way to travel around New Zealand, and there are some really obvious pros of traveling with hop-on buses in New Zealand.
Yeah, so a pro is that it provides the best of both worlds. So you can use it as a stress-free tour where you can just travel around the country, with the set itinerary, doing the things that the driver suggests, and it's just like, there's nothing to really think about. But on the other hand, you have the flexibility to hop off the bus and jump back on at a later date. So, you can also have independent travel sort of wedged in between as well. It's also a great way to meet new people. So you are traveling again with like-minded travelers. They're usually a younger crowd on the Kiwi Experience. It's usually between 18 to 30-year-olds, but it's mainly between the 18 to 25-year-olds. And it's usually like a fun young crowd. You can. How old does that make me sound? But you could have a great time with like-minded people, and it is a fun time. I did it back in the day when I was young, and anyway.
I know that. I was like picturing that happening.
Yeah. It's also action-packed. So each day you are doing a lot of stuff. You're making the most out of your time. They do take you to a lot of free things to do as well, so you're not always obligated to have to do paid activities. There's lots going on.
All right, but there are also obviously some cons. There is some cons in everything. So what are the cons of traveling with hop-on bus passes in New Zealand?
So yeah, although Kiwi Experience say their bus pass, the upfront price of the bus pass can be reasonable. You need to also bear in mind that you are going to be spending a lot of money.
Much more to it.
Yeah, when you are actually on the bus, knowing that your accommodation isn't included, so you're paying for your accommodation every night. You're paying for all your food for the whole trip. You're also paying for any activities you're adding on, which is very tempting for that to go up and up and up, to do as much and much and much as you can. So yeah, budgeting can be quite hard on Kiwi Experience. You need to, if you want to be on a budget, you need to be quite disciplined. Otherwise, it can get pretty expensive.
The peer pressure of everybody signing up for activities is real.
Yes. Okay. Another con is that the terms and conditions of Kiwi Experience can be a little bit cloudy. They say on their trips that it's unlimited travel, so you can do the bus pass over and over again, which is true for some parts of the country, but not all parts of the country. So you do need to actually look into the terms and conditions. And also another con is, although they're advertising as like, hop on, hop off bus, super flexible, blah, blah, blah. If you're traveling in the peak season, in the summer season, which is December, January, February, usually the buses are really fully booked, and they can be fully booked like even a couple of weeks ahead. So if you're like, okay, yeah, I think in 3 days I'm ready to get back on the bus, and then you phone up and you realize, oh well, we don't actually have a seat available until the 28th of blah blah blah, then you realize that you need to actually plan a little bit ahead in summer, and it doesn't feel as flexible in that case.
So let's continue and let's talk about all the different type of buses in New Zealand. And so we're going to do a very quick rundown right here of the type of buses which are also available in New Zealand. And I'm going to be starting with the local city bus. So New Zealand's public transportation network are relatively extensive in big cities. Do not expect in small towns to have really big, extensive bus networks, right? But in places like Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington, Queenstown, Dunedin, Palmerston North, Gisborne, and Invercargill, you will have decent bus, public buses that will allow you to basically make the most of the cities. We do have full guides on each of those public transports on nzpocketguide.com, and there is a link to that very article in the in the description of this video. Just scroll down to the section that says other bus network. The way a public transport network in New Zealand work are you can pay to the bus driver when you hop onto the bus, just to make sure that you do have the correct amount of fare, as they're not often giving change, and most of the time don't give change because it's part of the term and conditions. But a lot of the different cities have kind of smart cards, so cards that you can load some money onto it. So in Auckland, that would be the AT Hop. In Wellington, that would be the Smart Card or the Snapper Card, wasn't it at some point called? A Metro Card is in Christchurch, the B Card is in Queenstown, for instance. So those cards, you can buy them at like little dairy shop, little corner store, and you can buy that plastic card and top it up with some money. So you can say, okay, I'm buying the card and I want to put $20 on there, and then every time you go into the bus, you scan it and you will pay depending on which zone you are using. So very, very simple. Another way buses are used in New Zealand are on day tours.
Yeah, so if you are, for instance, taking a trip from Queenstown to Milford Sound, or you're taking a trip from Paihia to Cape Reinga in the Bay of Islands, then these are usually day tours that are taking place primarily on coaches. They're treated more as a tour, so it's not like you're buying a bus pass or anything. You're just booking a tour, and that coach transport is included. And we do have articles on nzpocketguide.com of the various different places that you can take bus tours. So yeah, check those out if you're interested. In
fact, there are some places in New Zealand which are only accessible by bus. You can't go in any other ways, and usually they're part of those day tour things.